Hey guys, this is Akshat Madan. Welcome back to a new video. This video is going to be different because we have Gaurav with us. So, Gaurav, why don't you go and introduce yourself? How did you enter into Android development? Yeah, we want to listen to your story.
Hey Akshat, uh, thanks for the brief intro about myself. I'm Gaurav Thakkar. I work as an Android dev at Book My Show, which is India's largest entertainment destination.
Mhm.
So I have around 3 years of experience building mobile apps, not just limited to Android, but I've done some work on iOS as well, and I've worked with Flutter. So all in all, let's say I have a good view about the mobile app development
Yeah.
architecture as such. So coming to how I got started here is basically by breaking stuff. So the typical Tod kind of engineer
Yeah.
over here. So basically, just getting into detail on what I mean by Tod type of engineer. So I think it was class 11th when one of my friends actually introduced me to having custom ROMs on my phone. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are aware about custom ROMs or not, but just to give you a brief, just like you can change clothes every day, so the base body remains the same. It's
Okay.
something similar to that, right? The base Android stuff remains the same, but you'll all have different skins. So if you get a OnePlus, you might get Color OS. If you
Yeah.
have Xiaomi, you might get MIUI. If you have Pixel, you get stock Android. So if you like, let's say, root your phone or like unlock the bootloader as we call it,
Mhm.
so you get to experience that zone of Android. So that really got me curious over here. Then I got into reverse engineering Android. So a lot of people who've been close to me, they know that I actually went ahead and decompiled Instagram, and I themed it to be dark.
Yeah.
That's illegal, but like the first of my antics, let's say, of breaking stuff. And then I realized that breaking stuff is harder than actually building stuff. So I got into building stuff. So that's how it all began, and then just experimented with things. I just looked out to, let's say, reduce some manual effort by bringing software to that. So let's say, for example, today I want to build an I am bored of watching the timetable on my notice board. I just have to go walk to the notice board again and again and just see what my next lecture will be, or what day of the week it is, like that. So I would just build an app for that, just a common very use case which people do. That's how I got started basically.
So I can say that you started building apps, like started in class 11th and then
uh
started with building small apps.
no, honestly, I started building apps in the second year of engineering, but
Okay.
like I started getting interested in doing a lot of stuff way before that. So it was just out of passion that this thing came into
Yeah. Yeah.
picture. Yeah.
So I assume your first programming language was Java because you started Android. Am I
Yeah.
right? So before we move forward in the video, I'm very happy to announce that I'm bringing a course on full stack mobile app development where we are going to build the application in Flutter using block state management, and we are also going to build a custom backend using Node.js, Express.js and TypeScript language. So what are we going to learn in this course? First of all, we are going to build the backend using TypeScript. We are going to learn basics of TypeScript, then creating a standard industry level project structure, planning the routes, then connecting our database MongoDB. So we are not going to learn Firebase. We are going to start with MongoDB, then creating a simple Hello World API, writing the repository function, creating the controllers, then writing the auth middleware to protect our APIs. Then we are also going to learn how to test your APIs using Postman. So we are going to create a Postman collection. Then we are going to host our backend server on render so that we can utilize all those APIs in our mobile app. So this is going to cover your backend part. On the front end part, we are going to build a standard project structure for Flutter. Then we are going to write down all the API services for all the APIs that we created in the backend. Then we are going to create an auth layer. Then we are going to create your feed layer, which is going to show your tweets that we are going to build in this project. Then we are going to use a block for writing the business logic and then ultimately write the UI. Right. So who should buy this course? The beginners and intermediate should buy this course because we are going to cover, or I'm going to take you from beginner stage to intermediate stage in this full stack mobile app development, not just Flutter. Right, so hope to see you there. Now let's get back to the topic. Okay,
Yeah.
Java. So what do you
Actually,
like about Java?
before that,
Hmm.
even before Java, I think I did something called as QBasic. I
Okay.
don't know if you
Yeah,
guys are
yeah.
familiar
I know
with
that.
that or not, but yeah, I learned that in school. So QBasic was the first programming language.
Yeah, yeah. Understood. So what do you like about Java? Like, why Java?
I think Java as the first language to start with is really good because you have to actually write exactly what you want. But like why I like Java is just like one of the reasons. That's why I like Java. I used to like Java for its verbosity, but until I met Kotlin and then I realized that yeah, you could actually do stuff by writing a lot less. But yeah, to begin with. I think Java should be a great choice because you actually learn how to, describe to the computer what you actually want. So if you compare it with some language like let's say Python, which a lot of people prefer to get started with these days, it has a lot of stuff, served to you on the platter. But as you get advanced in it, you will still realize that, you're missing the recipe of the food that is served to you. And sometimes you need to know that recipe, right? So if you're a senior engineer or let's say a person who is expected to have a lot of let's say technical skills, or let's say if you want to mentor someone, you need to know your stuff deep, right? So Java, if you begin with Java, you will automatically have cultivated that habit of basically knowing stuff in deep. So
Correct.
I think that's why I like Java.
Understood, understood. So how is your experience working at Book My Show? Like whenever your friends might be booking a movie ticket, you can say that, hey, I work here. So how is your experience working at such a cool company?
Yeah, so the first point, as you rightly said, that it's great to see the work that you do
Mm.
actually coming into people's lives and helping them in some way or the other. So that is definitely a big bonus and a big selling point for me. Basically, is you
Yeah,
just get to say that you are actually using what I create basically that way. So definitely that's the point. And I think another thing about working at Book My Show that has taught me in the last 8 9 months or something like that is product thinking.
mm,
So product thinking is in the sense that there are two people. Okay, let me compare this by saying that there are two people. One is an engineer and one is a product engineer. So
mm,
an engineer will just write code, right? If I give you, let's say, write a calculator app, you'll just write a calculator app. You'll add your plus minus signs, you'll add your operations, division, multiplication, log, numbers, whatever. But if I tell you that you're a product engineer, you will actually start to think, how a simple tap with the plus button would help the user. Or should I place, let's say, the plus button before the minus button because the user might use it, more frequently or something like that. Or let's just, mix the operations in such a way that the most used operations are placed first in at your UI or something like that. We're talking very technically. So Book My Show has kind of taught me that. And another thing I think Book My Show has taught me is people skills because um, the amount of people I've got to deal with over here hasn't hasn't only just shaped my life, but like I've improved on my people skills, as I said. So I've also been a lockdown pass out. So first of my initial jobs were just work from home jobs. Those are good, but like interacting with people, unlocks a whole new skill for you. So I think coming to Book My Show has just given me that. So definitely, it's a really good experience. Like these 2 points have been a highlight of my 9 months of career over here. And yeah,
okay.
one more thing is working for scale.
Mm,
So, you work on a small app and then you work on an app with the scale of Book My Show, right? Where
correct.
your screen might be accessed by, let's say, millions of users. So you actually have to think like, you know, what might go wrong or uh, like what might happen.
Yeah,
So let's say if you're targeting Play Store ratings, right? And I say my app is 99% crash free, but
mm,
let's say Book My Show, let's assume it has a scale of 20 million, okay? And
mm,
I'm saying that this is crashing for 1% of users. That is just like 2 million, right? So that's a
correct.
big number.
Right.
So you have to think of everything in on a huge scale, let's say. So that has also been the learning out there.
Understood. Understood. Got it. That's a nice answer. So my question will be like, how do you compare native development, like whether it is Android development or iOS development, with cross-platform? Because I am seeing nowadays that because these cross-platform frameworks like Flutter and React Native have gained a lot of popularity, so people are now confused or people are now afraid of trying their hands with Android development and native development also. So for a beginner or for a person who is just doing cross-platform development, what guidance would you like to give, or what points would you like to suggest to him? Okay.
Mm. That's a nice question, and I think it will spark a lot of controversy because all these days, people that are starting out, they will just have this question that,
Mm.
what should I actually start with, or
Yeah.
like what should be my go-to first. So, like, I'll take this question that way only. Like, if I'm a beginner, like, what should I start with? So, if I were starting out, first of all, I would keep the first thing in mind is that experiment everything,
Mm.
because when I'm starting out, I shouldn't be thinking about my job.
Mm.
So first of all, I should look to grow my skills everywhere. And I won't just limit this to the fact that you should just try mobile development. You
Mm.
should try cloud. You should try web development. You should try AI. You should try data science. You should put your hand into everything basically.
Mm.
But now, since the question is just limited to mobile development, and there are, let's say, two things, that is, one is native development and one is hybrid development. So I
Mm.
believe you should try both, first of all. Second thing, if you're at, let's say, a very close stage where you're just like approaching your placement drive or something like that. So in that sense, I would say if you're targeting smaller companies which are easy to get in, you should focus more on hybrid development, because smaller companies, or let's say startups, generally don't have the budget to have separate teams for iOS and Android, and they
Correct.
would definitely prefer something like a hybrid solution if I were to give something to them. So
Right.
definitely hybrid solutions like Flutter, React Native, for that matter, you should try. Then you should like prioritize over it, and then when you realize that as you get deeper and deeper into Flutter, or let's say you get senior into Flutter, you would still need to go native somewhere,
Mm.
because you will see that Flutter cannot do everything. Like, Flutter has
Right.
its limitations. It's
Right.
good, but like when you actually have to get your hands dirty, you need a good knowledge about native development as well. So that might be your entry into native development. That is one pathway for, let's say, a third or a fourth year person, where your placement drive is very close, or you want to get hired, you just want to get a job. Good option out there. Other than that, let's say if you're starting out in first, second year, which lesser people do, second year is just lesser people do, but that time you should focus on native development, because I think anyways, somewhere you will need this base. As I said, if you start with Flutter, someday you would have to end up doing native, or at least knowing about native. So
Right.
you should better start with native first and see what capabilities it has, what challenges it brings. Then you will actually be thankful for something like Flutter. So I would say it's a cross intersection of both.
Yeah.
And coming to not just Android development, you should also try iOS development, because when you're targeting something like Flutter, so you might need to go into the internals of iOS as well. Who knows? Like, you might have a very, very difficult issue that you're dealing with, where you're
Mm.
not finding answers on the internet, where you're not getting anything. So at that time, you need to know things like at a good depth, so that you can, get yourself out. I hope I answered your question.
Perfect. Perfect. No, it's a nice answer. It's a beautiful answer, I would say. So, question here arises is like, from where did you learn this Android development?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So initially, I think now that Google does not have a tie-up with Udacity, I think they do. But yeah, if you go to developer.android.com, you would find a lot of courses given by Google themselves.
Mm.
And I think when I was learning Android back in my second year, that would have been around 2017 something. Nah, that was 2019 or something like that. So that time Google had like a tie-up with Udacity, where they would send their own engineers and build courses with Udacity. And Udacity was, giving out all of that stuff for free. So basically you just get started with building all these little apps, calculator, tip calculator, very basic typical apps. That's how I started with. And then I was a person that generally I don't like a lot of video content because it makes me sleepy.
Right.
So And I am, as I said, more motivated by achieving something rather than just learning something. Like I never cared about getting a job, to be very honest. I just had fun in making Android apps, breaking stuff and everything like that. So like my learning was a bit of hybrid. Like I did courses as well, but I made sure that I got my hands dirty as well. Like not just not limited to the what the course is going to teach me, but generally just looking through projects or what people are building or what value I could contribute or something like that. So that way I got my hands dirty. And other than that, I think after around 6 to 8 months of learning Android, I picked up my first freelancing project, which was an iOS project. It was not an Android project. So I thought that let's just try. So if I know about Android development, I just thought that something similar might exist for iOS development. So at that time, iOS was bringing Swift UI, which was very similar to Jetpack Compose. So both were very initial stages when I took my first freelancing contract. So coincidentally, my freelancing contract was, they already had an Android app and they wanted to build an iOS app. So my learning was like greatly enhanced over there because I actually had to go read what's there in the Android code and write it in Swift. So
Right.
that way I strengthened my Android basics as well and iOS basics as well. So I think my learning has been like a mixed kind of do it also, learn about it also, read about all of it also, and break a lot of things, as I said.
Got it. Got it. So it's nice. So no, that part is really amazing that you read the Android code and then you had to code it in Swift. So that's really challenging and amazing. Uh, would you like to talk more about the apps that you have published on Play Store, the Android apps?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I don't have many right now, but I did a lot of freelancing work where there was a wallpaper app on iOS, which that was an iOS thing. So
Hmm.
this was the freelancing part that I did. They already had a wallpaper app on Android. I did it on iOS. Other than that, I think I don't remember. I did like around 4 to 5 freelancing projects, but I don't actually remember. Yeah, one of my notable apps that I did during the lockdown was uh, a Corona tracker, basically. So I'll just tell you in detail about what it used to do. So basically, at that time when COVID was, just um, grabbing everyone by a storm. Basically, we didn't have stats. Like
Yeah.
we had stats on, let's say, national level or state level or something like that, but we did not have stats at, let's say, the municipal level. Or if you see Pune, right? Pune is divided into 7 municipal slots or 8 municipal slots, something like that. So you didn't have data at the municipal slots level. Okay. So most of the data that they had, it used to come from the commissioner's Instagram handles or Twitter handles, where they used to put out maps. They used to divide Maharashtra Pune ka map into 7 municipal slots and then just publish numbers according to that. But then I thought that this is like a very inconvenient way of telling people about stats because not everyone is coming to Twitter, not everyone is coming to Instagram to actually see it. So what we thought was we actually started maintaining a CSV. Like there were people who were actually doing it. So they used to scout the internet for all of this data and they used to do it for Pune. So they used to maintain a CSV. So what I decided was rather than a website, I think an app would be more accessible. So the app started with that and then it got scaled up where I put in a lot of animations out there. Then got in new ideas where I was marking red zones on the map. So I put in a Google Maps ka section where, if this is a red zone, let's say if you are going through a route, you might find a red zone, or let's say how close is the nearest red zone to you in Pune. Basically that. Then I started off a news ka section as well. Like, you're getting daily updates about what's up with COVID and everything like that. So the lockdown and everyone is actually, just interested in COVID. So good start for that for me as well as an app. I think one of my notable projects, which I worked for 6 months and I promoted it a lot, but then in the end I had to shut it down because COVID went away. So of course relevance nahi hai abhi tak, but I got to learn about it a lot. So yeah, I
Understood.
don't know if it's there on Play Store or not. I haven't looked into my console from a long time. I've just been focusing on open source these days, so not focused on building projects or publishing to Play Store as such.
So in Android development, what is the hardest part? Like in Flutter, I know I really don't like doing platform channels and I really find it hard. So in Android development, what is the hardest part?
Uh, well, that is again a subjective question. So if
Yes.
you ask me, getting into the depth as I have with Android, it's definitely dealing with Canvas.
Hmm.
So just to give a brief of what Canvas is. So let's say I'm doing an animation, right? Where let's say a button is moving from here to here. So that is more of, let's say, if you put in mathematical terms, it's physics. Or let's say it's dealing with numbers where you're changing the position. So Canvas is something just similar like that, where let's say Canvas is such an API that your entire screen becomes your graph, like the graph that you might have done in school or maths ka classes, wherever, where you know exactly, let's say if I tell you plot something on XY. So Canvas is just actually about doing that, like, plot everything in XY and just draw a line. So let's say if I were to say draw a line, you would actually have to know ki this is the X, this is the Y, this is the X, this is the Y, and now you draw a line. So it's actually about dealing with geometry and stuff like that. So I think dealing with Canvas on Android is really hard, but coming like Jetpack Compose incoming with a Jetpack Compose incoming, you actually find that a little easier, but still it's been tough because I feel it's tough for me to visualize, and drawing is okay, but if things go down to animation, it gets even tougher. I think Flutter does a brilliant job with Canvas wherever Canvas is involved. So that's why I said ki, since I know both of them, so I know the disadvantages and advantages. And like as you said, Flutter ke liye platform channels, definitely Flutter has platform channels that is there. But if you know native, you won't find platform channels hard. You would actually find connecting your native code to Flutter with platform channels hard. Because let's say you're a less of a Flutter developer, coming from my situation, and I think, have you ever done isolates on Flutter?
I have.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
that's also hard, right? Because
Yes.
it's if it's just still async await, it's okay, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But when you actually have to get into IPC isolates and stuff
Oh,
like that, it gets a little hard because it's too low level, right? So
yeah.
I think that's the hardest part.
Right, right. So for all these harder things, do you think documentation, like reading a documentation is helpful?
Uh, yeah, definitely reading documentation is helpful, but I think more than reading the documentation, you should be willing to experiment. Like experiment in the sense that, let's say if I ask you to build a triangle, right? Let's take the classical canvas example. You don't know what a triangle is, but you still know how to, draw a line. So when you draw a line, let's say you go to the maths and say that, okay, this line is, let's say if it's an equilateral triangle, this line will be at 60 degrees to this line. That might be more knowledge. So the fact that this is an equilateral triangle and it might have 60 degrees as the angle will come to me as and when I read the article. And the further I read deeper into the article, I will know that this is a theory. Then I would actually go into implementing it. But maybe implementing it further, I might discover that in an equilateral triangle, all the sides are equal. Let's just give a classical example. So that is how you discover. You should do both. Like when you get things get tough, you should be willing to experiment and read both. It's the combination of that. You would just get deeper and somewhere you would find your answer. Secondly, I think another approach could to this could be that you could find people who've already been in that domain. So let's say you're doing Android and you're stuck in a really like weird issue where you don't find a lot of content, lot of docs, lot of bugs, or a lot of similar stuff on Stack Overflow or whatever you use. You could just reach out to developer engineers, developer relation engineers, which Google has. Like on Twitter, they are available on Medium, LinkedIn, and stuff like that. They
Right.
might be able to help you more, like because they are usually the people that know the people who've written that actually. So
Right.
the person who's written that would definitely be able to help you more on achieving what you want to achieve with what he or she has written. And the developer relations engineer could just be a link between that. And that's how you could build your connections as well. So I think it's good. It's, let's say, an opportunity, I would say. The deeper or the more stuck you get, that's like an opportunity for you to grow 10x compared to what you are right now.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Uh, many people have asked me this question, like which PC should they purchase for Android development? Because some of the people just commented that, hey, this code is like burning their Android Studio, burning their computer. So, what minimum requirements do you think they are required to run Android Studio perfectly? Because in web development, it is simple. You just have to run VS Code and Chrome, so that is fine. But in app development, you have to run emulators, you have to run Android Studio, which is like hell. So, what do you suggest? Like, what are the minimum requirements for Android development computer?
Okay, so let me split this question into two parts. First is like if you want to be a native app developer. Second thing is if you want to be a hybrid app developer. So native pay, definitely you would need Android Studio. And I think right now, as far as I know, from their developer website, they say that 16 GB is the minimum
Hmm.
required RAM on Windows and Mac both, I think. So generally, if you're a student and let's say you don't want to pay much, so you'll go with Windows definitely. वहाँ पे
Yeah.
16 GB RAM I think is a must. And yeah, I agree. Like entering into mobile app development, especially the native side, this has always been the catch. Like you need to have a good configuration wala machine. So that is definitely there. But yeah, 16 GB RAM I think should be there. And processor is not like you don't need to have that high end of a processor, and graphic card to nahi lagta because for Android Studio, what kind of graphics would you be doing? But I think it helps with emulator stuff, like acceleration and stuff is better on the emulator with having a graphic card, but that's just a secondary stuff. You won't need to run the emulator. Uh, there was one more catch. If you're not running the emulator, I think 8 GB RAM also makes the cut. But then when you want to run something on your device, you would actually be using your physical device and 8 GB of RAM, mostly for Android Studio. But then again, if you're using Android Studio with Chrome, you might need more than 8 GB. So 12 GB or 16 GB should just be the optimum cut, as I said. Because mostly what you would be doing is, say I'm building something and I have Chrome open, I might go to Stack Overflow, Chat GPT to Google what's going wrong, what's stuff like that. And coming to the second part, with hybrid development, I think there's not a lot of requirement here because VS Code runs on like bare minimum PCs as well. I've seen 4 GB RAM machines also handle VS Code very well. So I think let's take 8 GB as a figure for like hybrid development. 8 GB laptops these days are like at a cheaper price like than 16 GB definitely. So 8 GB is a good thing to get started with. Again, emulator ke liye you will have to use your physical device. But I think but definitely that is the I think entry barrier for mobile app development, that you have to have a good PC to get started with. Definitely.
Understood. My next question will be like, how do you maintain responsiveness in your apps? Like they should be visually perfect on all the mobile screens. In Flutter, we have the screen util package, which maintains like responsiveness on like phone of any size, like tablet you can take, iPad you can take. It maintains responsiveness. So in Android
Yeah.
development, how do you maintain responsiveness?
So now Android development, again, I'll split this question into two parts. There are two ways of doing Android development now. One is the declarative Flutter way using Jetpack Compose, and
Hmm.
one is the older way, which is using XML. So people in Android development properly from let's say last 2-3 years would know that like everyone is in a
Uh,
sandwich phase right now, right? Like people are
mhm.
going to the new stuff as well, and they still have the old stuff as well. So if you see the old stuff, we have something called as resource quantifiers.
Okay.
So basically, resource quantifiers may, to give you a very high level overview, you have folders according to different screens or different screen sizes. If you have worked with web, do you know about media queries?
Yes, yes, yes. It's there in
Yeah.
Flutter also.
So yeah. So I think native Android development has that as well. That you have media queries, but you have media queries in folders.
Hmm.
So let's say I'm drawing a button, right? So if I package it according to different media queries, it would just show different on, let's say, different size devices, right?
Okay.
So resource quantifiers are just about that. So we achieve responsiveness by something similar to that in XML, where you have to have different folders with a specific naming convention, and the system will actually pick resources as per that sizes, basically. So that
Understood.
is how you deal with responsiveness in the XML way. In Compose way, you have something similar to the screen utils package in Flutter, where the system tells you that this is it is of a certain size. What do you want to do? Basically like that. So screen utils, I guess, just does that for you. It just does that media query kind of abstraction and just tells you, like, let's say, hey, this is a 1,000 pixel screen, or let's say this is a 500 pixel screen. What do you want to do? How do you want to render it? So
Correct.
basically, it looks similar to that only. So I think दोनों में ही handle करने का mechanism is the same
Perfect.
basically, but
Perfect.
it's just that how elaborate or how like as I said, the comparison between Java and Python. So how much do you have to write to do the same stuff? So
Correct.
mostly I think across iOS also it is the same. I don't think it's different.
Correct. Correct. So my next question will be like, what are some of the good open source Android projects that any open source developer can contribute, even beginners?
Okay. So personally, what I do is I follow GDEs a lot.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of Google developer experts, which these are people that adopt the newest stuff by Google the fastest, let's say. So let's say if today, let's say a generative AI SDK has come out. Okay,
Hmm.
so recently I was going through a GD's LinkedIn post where he has built out an SDK that will help you, bootstrap things faster for generative AI, basically. So GDEs generally you will find them on LinkedIn, you'll find them on Medium. You should just go and look at their GitHub. So you'll get a lot of things to learn because they experiment with a lot of stuff. And that will be stuff that you might use on your daily jobs or daily projects. That is one way of diving into open source. Another way of diving into open source is the awesome series of repositories. So there is a repository known as Awesome, I think, and Awesome has stuff for everything. Let's say Awesome Kotlin, Awesome Android, Awesome Flutter. So they have a collection of um, curated things that might be related to that specific awesome title. Let's say if there's awesome Kotlin, they might have 100 repositories that will tell you about, let's say, design patterns in Kotlin, DSA in Kotlin, or what's new in Kotlin, something like that. So awesome series of repositories are really good, I would say. And other than that, though, as you keep going through these kind of open source repositories, GitHub has got a good algorithm these days. Like it will recommend you repositories based on what you browse through. So that will also be helpful. And I feel like, mindlessly scrolling through, let's say, Instagram, YouTube, or something like that, most of my time is generally invested in all of this. Like, you really get to know, like, people are crazy good at thinking about, like, what to develop in tech. And your mind can basically wander into, like, let's say, 10 different worlds when you see people, how creative they get. So it's really good at GitHub and open source stuff.
Understood. Understood. So some of my last questions. If because you have just touched generative AI thing, so one question popped in my mind, like, how do production companies, like, how do companies build production applications which require AI? So yes, there are like OpenAI, there are like Midjourney APIs, Gemini Pro APIs available. So is this the only thing that companies do to build AI apps, like communicating the client and server through APIs, the AI powered APIs, or they use Firebase ML Kit or like TF Lite libraries or something to build AI applications for production?
So that would also again depend product to product wise. Personally, right now, I haven't personally looked into building a lot of generative AI things. But
Hmm.
I think, as far as what I know out of my experience, most of the people will be relying on APIs. Like APIs, so you can say that OpenAI ka APIs are there. Let's say Midjourney has its APIs. These are like very two famous names right now in generative AI ka world. So they will mostly be using APIs. That's what I feel, personal opinion. Other than that, let's say if you want something like, if you would go for a TF Lite or something like that file, I think Google Photos behind the scenes does a lot of that. Like, like if you see Google Photos, it has a picture, it has a face identification, I think they call it in machine learning, where,
Yeah.
if you go to Google Photos, it will extract out all the faces from your photos. And then it will ask you, can you label this? I'll find all the photos where I can see this face. So
Hmm.
let's say if I have a photo of me and my sister together. So it will just segregate all the photos by faces for you. I don't know if you have used photos or not, but I think that is done locally. But most of the stuff, like other than Pixel devices right now, or let's say the latest Samsung Galaxy that actually has hardware capabilities for processing these AI models, most
Yeah.
of it would be through the cloud. As you
Okay.
see, if you see, let's say if editing is concerned, like if you do editing in the photos, they use a lot of AI. So that is all cloud powered. So I don't think mobile devices have that much of power right now to do all the AI stuff, other than Pixel and a few devices that are there that will do things. And I don't know ki mobile frameworks or mobile apps utilize AI that much. Like I don't know of a famous app that uses other than Snapchat. Yeah, Snapchat has a lot of VR AR stuff, but on device I think less, but cloud more, I think.
Got it, got it. So one term I would like to coin here so that all the people are aware. So this is called edge computing, where the things or the computations happen on device, on the edge devices. So that's why it is called edge computing. So this is just for your reference, guys.
Okay,
So
but yeah,
yeah,
go on.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying what I have read about edge computing is processing at the node, right? Low. So
Yeah,
basically, that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah.
correct, exactly. So
But that
one
is
more
also a
con
service, right? That is
yeah,
also a paid thing that
correct, correct.
AWS, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So one more controversial question. How much salary can a beginner in Android development can expect? Again,
Okay.
there can be multiple scenarios based on your experience, based on your projects, internships, but an average number if you would like to give.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that point that it all depends on how skilled you are and how much experience do you have, or like how much value you would bring to a team, or and the most important above all is how do you negotiate, or how do you sell your skills in an interview. So that is the most important part that I have learned in a hard way. But yeah. So keeping all of that aside, a good range should be for a person starting out should be an 8 LPA should be a good number to start off with mobile development. 6 to 8 LPA is a very good number to get started. Like let's assume no experience, just the bare minimum skills fitting the bare minimum requirement, just starting out. 6 to 8 LPA is a very good range. But yeah, again, it can differ according to region. But talking about India, I think paying 6 to 8 LPA for a startup won't be a big thing, like for an Android dev or a Flutter dev for that matter.
Understood. Understood. So I have seen that you mostly go to these developer conferences. I myself go, but what happens in these developer conferences? Would you recommend a beginner or a fresher to go in these developer conferences? Like what actually
Definitely.
happens? Yeah.
Yeah, so great question here, I would say. So developer conferences has been my go-to thing for growth. Like as I said initially, I was telling you about the differences from differences in work from home and differences in work from office. So this is the exact difference that I'm talking about. You learn on your screen, that's a different learning. You learn to talk to people, you learn to go to places where you see a lot of people, like-minded individuals, you learn differently there. So what happens as you start going to conferences is you meet a lot of people, definitely. So people, if you see that there will be people that will be way beyond you in your skills, and there will be people that will be way below you in your skills as well. So when you meet both level of people, you will actually come and realize that where you are placed. Like you will have people that are above you in your skill set. You will have them as inspiration, and you can easily mentor people who are below you in your skill set. So that is the very direct implication of what happens when you meet out a lot of people. Other than that, there are some conferences where you will actually learn such good content, and you will see people that they contribute to a lot of things, and you will see the trajectory, like how people grow. And yeah, definitely another thing is you learn how to make friends. So definitely that is a really good skill as you senior up in your career, the soft skill scenario that they talk about. So that is where you learn all of that. So it's very important. And
Got it.
yes, as you said, like a fresher and an experienced person both should do it, because for an experienced person, I think it will help them become relevant right now, let's say relevant with the changing atmosphere. And for a fresher, they will just find, let's say, I have heard so many freshers who have found their jobs through these developer conferences. Like,
Right.
if you approach on LinkedIn, a resume is just a piece of paper. Like, there are thousands of resumes that come to HRs, but how do they know which one is authentic? So that's where a person to person communication will make a remarkable difference for you. So
Right.
that's that.
Okay. My last question, and so like last question is like, if I'm a beginner, I'm in third year or I'm in final year, I know OP principles, but I want a 6 months roadmap to learn Android development so that I can land a good job.
Okay,
What should be my roadmap?
six
Yes,
months,
6 months
right?
roadmap.
Yeah,
Yes.
and what did you mention? What do you already know?
OP principles, object-oriented programming, I already know.
Okay, okay. So object-oriented programming principles, if you already know, I am assuming here that you already know, let's say Java or Kotlin, because that is, let's say, the prime languages you would need for native development. Again, assuming native development, but I'll also share the roadmap for hybrid development. So six
Yeah.
months, I think let's split it into 2 to 2 months. Okay. So the first 2 months will be picking up skills. So you have to be really fast. You have to move and just, let's say, know the basics. So in 2 months, let's just split Android development into as many topics as you like, but let's just target these first 2 months will be for learning the basics. And let's say I will just be doing, let's take up a course on Udemy, Udacity, whatever you like, paid course. A lot of free courses on YouTube are there as well. So just get started. 2 months may you just know ki kya hai. And let's assume that you've just freshly learned the languages. So by freshly learn, I would say, like, let's say if I'm learning Java, I just have come to know about loops, variables, conditions, if else. So first 2 months will just be, applying actually that. So if I just say, let's say if I am just, putting a text field and a button, that is an app for me. Like that will calculate the tip. Let's say a very basic tip calculator or like that. First 2 months where the target should just be that. Next 2 months में I should focus on getting a little deeper, and second 2 months में I will also do a peer kind of survey कि I will look through jobs and what is the expectation at the entry level. Do I know about that? That is the second phase of 6 months, I would say. So next 2 months I would cover that, and last 2 months में I would also cover a little bit of uh, like soft skills in my interview, because I think those are game changers when you hire a fresher, and if you see soft skills, good communication, good let's say presentation skills and all of that, that will be a game changer for an interview. So I think last 2 months may you should target more of soft skill and non-Android skills, I would say, or last 1 month, let's say. And वहाँ पे you should also focus on building your portfolio. Portfolio could mean building your GitHub, building your LinkedIn, building your own personal website. You should focus on that. So I think 6 months is a little short frame for getting a good job. But हाँ ठीक है, this 6 months should be for me. I think hybridically also it would look the same. So nothing different. It's just like you will just decide if I split it in 2 to 2, you might split it in, let's say, 4-2, or whatever you would like. Let's say 5-1. Up to you. So I would
Understood.
do it this way.
Understood. Understood. So I think this is it. And I think we have covered a lot of questions, a lot of important questions, significant questions. I think this will help all the beginners out there who want to start their journey in Android development. So I'm really grateful to you, Gaurav, for joining me in this podcast. I hope you also enjoyed. I hope your guidance will help a lot of people out there. So any last message would you like to give to the audience? Any last tip?
Uh, Let me think on this. Wait.
Okay.
Uh, mm, what can I have as questions? Tell me, what will help promote your channel, or what should I say that will help promote your channel?
So
Tell.
most of the people are actually worried about getting their first job or getting their first
Okay,
internship, right?
okay,
So
okay.
I also say to them that work on your portfolio. Be talkative about your portfolio on the internet. There are a lot of platforms. This one tip I give to them. According to you, what should be the tip?
Acha.
My
That's
thing.
a good
Yeah.
question. That's a
Yeah.
good question. So, like, let me end by just saying that since most of people on your channel are people who want to land their first job, as
Mm.
you've already told me before, so I would just end them up with a thinking change. So, everyone these days, like let's say at your level where I'm looking for my first job, everyone wants the job. But let me invert this thinking for you and ask you, like, as a recruiter, why I should hire you? Am I thinking on those lines? Like, it should be very important that I'm thinking on those lines. So, when I start thinking on those lines, the perfect or the first thought that comes to my head is, what value do I give if
Right.
I were to get hired? So if I start thinking on the value based terms, right? That value in the sense, if you just say I have a degree, there are 1,000 people who have a degree. Let's say if I have a tip calculator app, there are 1,000 people who have a tip calculator. What unique do I add? And again, the question will be, how do I find what unique? By just doing what everyone is doing. You will find your unique in that process. But when you find your unique, make sure you market that, make sure you sell your skills. I think that is how you turn the equation from how do I get a job to how do I get a recruiter to give me a job. That is
Right.
like a thinking switch, right? So
Right.
that is what you should be focused on more rather than just focusing on how to get a job. That's
Mm.
what I feel. That's what I tell people. So
Understood. That's a nice tip. So thanks, Gaurav, for joining me in this session, and best of luck.